And now we return to Jimmy Allen. Work has been progressing on the air movie Coffin Nails, in which Jimmy Allen and Speed Robertson are flying. However, the Pacific Studios are filming a similar picture, the flying scenes of which are under the direction of Nails Ballou. It is generally understood that only one picture of this type can be successfully marketed, so both studios are fighting desperately to complete their picture. We now find Jimmy and Speed in the operations office on the flying field at El Toque. The boys have forgotten movies and events of the past 2 days and are now discussing the part they will play in the Vanderpool Cup race. Jimmy is speaking.
Well, Speed, I guess we won't be here much longer.
Yeah, Jim. Our movie careers are just about finished.
I guess you're anxious to get back east and start preparing for the transcontinental race.
Yeah, that should be a real race this year.
You haven't received any word from the monsoon people about me, have you, Speed?
Well, not yet, but don't you worry. We'll hear one way or another before long.
Oh, I hope so. Do you really think I have a chance?
Oh, why not, Jim? Yeah, I think you got a very good chance. And you'll make good, too. If I didn't think so, I wouldn't have recommended you.
Oh, thanks, Speed. I'll bet that monsoon job will be a plenty powerful baby.
You can say that again.
Say, Speed, what's the dope on this mystery ship that the Mercury people have built?
Well, they call her the Mercury Mystery Ship, and she's well named. I haven't been able to get any dope so far from anyone but a friend of mine. And he heard that on a test flight, she easily exceeded the world's record.
Oh, gosh, that's going to be some race. But say, who's going to fly the mystery ship?
Well, that's part of the mystery, I guess. I've checked up on all the racing pilots I know, and I can't figure out who's going to fly her. When they started construction about 6 months ago, they approached me about it.
Oh, they knew they couldn't do better.
Thanks, kid. Well, suppose we forget the Vanderpool race for the time being and concentrate on the job we got to do here.
Well, how do things look to you now, Speed? We sure have shot a lot of scenes the last couple of days.
Yeah, I know, Jim. We're making good time. The boys have been working hard, and Flash has kept the ships running for us. We really have nothing to complain about.
What does Director Stewart think about it? Did you talk to him today?
No, I didn't, Jim. We were both so busy I didn't get a chance. He's coming down here, though. I'll be here in a few minutes. Oh, I imagine he wants to discuss the balance of our work with me.
The Pacific crowd have been doing a lot of flying, too. Seemed to me their ships were in the air all day today.
Yeah, I know it. Ballou is driving his pilots like a Simon Legree. He's making it tough for us, too.
He sure is. How does the thing stand? Do you think we can complete our picture ahead of Pacific?
I don't know, Jim. I'll frankly admit it has me worried. Flash Lewis is telling me today that he understands Pacific is about through with its air scenes. One of the mechanics from over at Pacific told him.
That doesn't sound so good, does it?
That's bad news, Jimmy. You remember what Mr. Milliken told us a few days ago? If our picture is not completed ahead of Pacific's, we may as well chuck it in a wastebasket.
Yeah. Well, I still can't understand why Mr. Milliken and the Mammoth Company can't prevent Pacific Studios from copying our story.
Yeah, it does look sort of funny. But as Stewart explained it to me, this Pacific crowd is clever enough to make sufficient changes in the story to get by.
That sure is a dirty trick, though.
Stewart tells me they have a reputation for just this sort of thing. Some studio out here in Hollywood gets a good story, gets in production with it, and this Pacific crowd gets wind of the deal somewhere or other and makes a picture just like it.
And the first picture that reaches the exhibitors is the one that sells, huh?
That seems to be the idea, all right.
Well, it certainly seems to work out that way. The Pacific crowd are breaking their necks to get all the air scenes filmed.
Yeah, and I've noticed that generally speaking, their air scenes are not as complicated as ours. Either that or the director is more easily satisfied.
It doesn't seem to take them nearly as long to do their stuff as it does ours.
Yeah, I've noticed that, Jim. In fact, I mentioned it to Stewart yesterday. But I'll say this for Stewart. He knows exactly what he wants, and he isn't satisfied until he gets it.
That's right. I guess he's a good director, all right.
I don't blame him a bit, either. The flying scenes we do are as near perfect as it's possible to get them. But it takes time. More than once, we've reshot a scene 2 or 3 times because Stewart wasn't satisfied with it. From what I've seen of that Pacific bunch, they very seldom bother to retake any of their flying work.
What can we do about it, Spain?
And I'm frank to say I don't know. We utilize all available flying time. In fact, we work a lot harder than those Pacific pilots. But in the long run, we don't accomplish any more, and in some cases, not as much.
Say, Speed, you know, I have an idea. By George, I just thought of something, and I bet it'll work. It might be the answer to this whole situation.
Well, if you have any good ideas, for heaven's sake, tell me.
All right, now listen to this. It seems to me that if we sort of...
Excuse me a minute, Jimmy. I'll see who this is.
Sure, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Stewart. Come in. I've been inspecting you.
Hello, Speed. Jimmy.
Hello.
Sit down. Make yourself comfortable, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you.
You look worried. What's happened now? More trouble?
Robertson, I'm plenty worried. I've been in a blue haze all day.
Well, I thought the work went along pretty smoothly today. We got in a whole lot of flying and some nice scenes.
Gee, that fight between the Thunderbolts and the 190s was wonderful. Everybody remarked about it.
Yes, I know about that. Not referring to the quality of our work. I'm satisfied with that, thank goodness. If I wasn't, we'd do it over.
Yeah, I know that all right. Well, what's troubling you then?
It's the problem of time, Robertson. Time. We've been fighting against it since the first minute I set foot on this field of yours. We're not getting enough work done.
Well, we're doing all we can, Mr. Stewart.
Yes, but that isn't enough. I spend half my time looking at the clock and checking the calendar. We must speed up. Devise ways to do this work faster.
Stewart, I'm beginning to think that you and Milliken expect too much from us. We have a good crowd of pilots here and a hard-working bunch of mechanics. These ships and engines are old. They require a lot of care. You demand almost ideal conditions for your filming. The light has to be just so. The cloud formations must be right. In other words, the success of every scene you take is dependent upon a good many different and entirely unrelated factors. It's necessary that all these things dovetail perfectly. If they don't, it means reshooting a scene, and that takes time. And understand me now, I'm not complaining. The pilots are not growling, and the mechanics are not laying down on the job, in spite of the long hours and the adverse working conditions. But after all, there's a limit to the work that can be accomplished in a given amount of time.
That may be so, Robertson. But I've noticed that the Pacific flyers accomplish more work than we do. And they're working under the same conditions.
I beg to differ with you there, Mr. Stewart. They are not working under the same conditions. In the first place, Mr. Pelletier is not as exacting as you are. In the second place, we've had some unfortunate delays caused by mechanical failures, which they didn't have.
Pelletier is a shoddy director. I wouldn't countenance work which he approves.
And I don't blame you a bit. But on the other hand, you mustn't expect to get better work in the same amount of time.
Everybody's remarked, Mr. Stewart, that the scenes you take are much better than his.
Of course they are. I know that.
Well, of course, the whole trouble is this. We have to complete our picture before Pacific finishes theirs. We're under a bad handicap.
That's the whole thing in a nutshell, Robertson. If it weren't for Pacific, I wouldn't be in such a mad rush. But what can we do? What Mr. Milliken told us the other day is absolutely correct. Unless we finish our picture ahead of Pacific, it's utterly...
I have an idea. In fact, I was just about to explain it to Speed when you came in. It might get us out of this whole difficulty.
If you have a solution, my lad, let's have it. I'll admit the whole thing is about to drive me balmy.
Now, go ahead, Jimmy. What is this idea of yours?
Well, as I understand it, the Pacific Studios have copied the story Coffin Nails and are filming one just like it, right?
Yes, that's right, Jimmy. While neither Mr. Milliken nor I have seen the scenario, we're certain it's a direct steal of Coffin Nails. Of course, they made a few changes in the manuscript in order to avoid any legal question of plagiarism. They're smart enough to do that.
Yeah, there seems to be no doubt about that. We discussed it before. I guess we all agree that Nails Ballou, while he had the scenario Coffin Nails in his possession, got the idea of the story.
All right. Now, as I understand it, Mr. Milliken originally gave Ballou the story to read. Now, if we have it doped out right, Ballou took the story, made a copy of it, and then returned the original to Mr. Milliken.
That's my understanding of what happened. Although, of course, we have no proof that Ballou actually copied the scenario.
Now, that's just what I'm getting at. If we could get definite proof that Ballou did copy that story, what would happen?
If you could do that, Jimmy, Pacific Studios would never release their air picture. I can tell you that.
Are you sure of it, Mr. Stewart?
Don't be silly. I'm positive. Pacific wouldn't even fight the case. If we could prove that, we'd have clear sailing.
All right, that's all I want to know.
What's in the wind, Jim? What are you up to now?
Never mind, just leave it to me.
Jimmy, I wish you luck, but I don't think you'll get any proof against Ballou. If you do, it'll mean everything in the world to us. Well, I'll pop along now. And say, Speed, have your ships on the line at 6 in the morning. We have a full day tomorrow.
We'll do our darndest, Mr. Stewart. You can bank on that. Good night.
Good night. See you in the morning.
Hey, Jimmy, what do you have up your sleeve? What's this business about you finding some proof against Ballou?
Now, listen, Speed. We all think Ballou copied this manuscript.
Yeah, I think he did.
Well, if he copied it, the copy must be around somewhere. And it's probably in his quarters.
Oh, in his quarters, huh? I see what you're after now, you scamp.
Well, don't you agree with me?
Jimmy, I'll tell you what I think happened. After Ballou read over our scenario, he probably was all set to go to work for Milliken. Then when you and I came into the picture, he was told that Milliken was going to hire us, then he'd be left out in the cold. He probably trots over to Pacific with the story and sells them on the idea of using it. You know, he may even have claimed that he wrote that story himself.
If Ballou did that, he must have a copy of the original story. And by George, if he does, I'm going to find it.
How are you going to do it?
I'm not just sure yet, Speed, but Don't worry, I'll figure out some way.
Here, wait till I see who this is. Hello? Hello, Roy. Yeah, Jimmy is here. You're not interrupting anything important. Jimmy and I are just sitting here talking. Okay. Yeah, Jim, Roy wants to talk to you.
Okay. Hello? Oh, yeah, Roy. Sure. Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten we'd planned on going into town tonight. But say, Roy, come over here right away. Yeah, right away. I want to talk to you about something. Well, you see, I need some help, Roy. I have a job that sort of requires some help, and I think you're the man that can do it. Oh, yeah, and incidentally, it'll be helping your father. Uh-huh. Well, it's something to do with Baloo. Yeah, I know how you feel about him, Roy. All right, now here's the dope. Tomorrow morning, Baloo is scheduled to be flying at about 9 o'clock. Now, I want you to meet me. Now, Roy, I'll tell you just how we'll work this sort of thing. We'll have to be very careful, but...
Can Jimmy expose Baloo's dishonesty? Can he secure proof that will save the picture Coffin Nails? Listen to the next thrilling air adventure of Jimmy Allen.